This episode of Cyprus Diaspora Uncovered features a special film presentation on The Summer Will Come, a story of migration, identity, and the cost of freedom, exploring how displacement reshapes not only one life, but generations. Based on award-nominated novelist Soulla Christodoulou's book, The Summer Will Come, is currently under contract for Greek translation and is in development as a feature film, reflecting the author's commitment to bringing Cyprus-centred stories to international audiences.
Okay, I'll kick it off. I'm Soulla Christodoulou. I'm the author of The Summer Will Come. And one of the questions I get asked often is, where did the story come from? Where are its roots? How did you decide to write that story? And the truth is, my mum was really, really ill. And through her various surgeries and hours of sort of lying in bed, I spent increasingly more and more time by her side. And even in those moments when we were hoping she would turn a corner and things would get better and there was light at the end of the tunnel, what hit me was my mum might die. And in those moments, the light came on when she regressed and talked a lot about her time growing up in Lefkara and what it was like growing up with her twin brother and her older brother, and what it was like going to the local school, and then what it was like to leave that place and move to London and to start over with very little English, very little knowledge and understanding of London being so huge. And the more and more she talked to me about those memories that she had held on to and that were coming out at this most devastating time in her life and in my life too, made me realise that actually these stories need to be held on to. They need to be recorded. They need to be remembered. They need to be shared. And actually in doing that and in writing the book, in sharing that story, I have connected with people who have shown empathy and connection and understanding in a story that isn't just mine or my family's, but it's actually their story too. They too had family that moved from Cyprus to the UK, or from Cyprus to Canada or the US or Australia. And even further than that, other immigrant stories. So readers started to share with me and message me saying, that story really reminded me of my family's story. And that's really how that story came about. And then, of course, I connected with Athena, and we're here today to talk about how she's bringing together with Ioanna the book to the big screen. So I'll pass you on to them. Thank you.
Thanks, Soulla. So my mum has Alzheimer's, and around the same time as I started to read the book, my mum moved in with me. And one of the things she went to talk about was a lot of how she came over, what it was like, what people were like, the difficulties they had, the joys they had as well. And in reading the book and realizing that part of who we are, especially the diaspora, because we grew up in England being not really Greek and not really Cypriot, not really English, and we sort of had our kind of Gringlish world that we existed, and with a lot of shame because Cyprus didn't exist on the map for people outside of Cyprus, and when we came here we were Charlouas, so we didn't really have that identity. But it made me realize how important these stories were to our identity, and that generation is dying now, and those people, the Evangelias of the novel that took that ship with very little and crossed onto a land that was very unwelcoming, because at the time, obviously, there were the struggles for the Cyprus independence, and built a home. That was the story I connected to in the novel, and I realized that that's the story of every person who lives in the diasporic existence, be it Cypriot, be it Jewish, be it whatever nationality you are. The diaspora experience is a very special one. And our origin story of how we ended up anywhere is really important. So I kind of felt this urgency to tell this in order to kind of remind us where we came from. And a few years ago, I made a documentary which was about that, which was about the North London Cypriots and how they moved along a 29 bus route. And I was interviewing one person for the documentary, and at the end she realized that her nephews don't know that her Yaya and Bapul got on a boat and arrived in Victoria and started to build their life. And that stuck with me, and that's where this film was born. And one of the things I'm very specific about in terms of telling this story on the screen is that it's not a melodrama. You know, it's a modern telling of this story. So cinematically, it needs to feel modern and connect with new audiences, with people who don't remember these stories, maybe have heard them, but actually feel pride in where they come from originally, maybe 3 or 4 generations back. And also what's important is to work with as much talent from Cyprus behind as in front of the camera. So we have an amazing DP, Andreas Neo, who's worked with Alfonso Cuarón, who's going to be the cinematographer on the film. We have cast it. So it's really important that it's part of the narrative of a Cyprus narrative, but it's a Cypriot gaze. And it's a story of a woman, which for me is really important, because when we talk about, big waves of movement, we talk about men, and we forget these silent heroes, the women that built the houses, that made the homes, that brought the food to them, that kept the families together, when quite often the men lost their way in gambling dens, in the bright lights of London, and women had to hold it together in factories and in machines and build the successes, the grit that a lot of us have today. So how many of us have an Evangelia who got on a boat somewhere along the line to build the people we are today? And really it's to honor them. I'm going to pass on to Ioanna now to do the business side.
Okay, so we're an independent production. We are at the final stages of development. I'm an independent producer, and for the past 17 years, I make films from scratch. I raise the finance, and then I find the audience, and I close the loop, as they say. I read the script, and I felt that it was a great story of resilience and pride and forward thinking, and an important film to be made in a world where it's really paramount for other stories to be made beyond the cultural Anglo-Saxon world that we've all grew up with. And there is real possibility and for audiences to connect, support, and make that into a commercial endeavor. And we're here because we feel like it's a very important film to be part of the Cyprus Diaspora Forum, because it is a story of the diaspora. And we are very interested in connecting with people that would like to know more about what we're up to. We have a script, we have a creative deck, we have a finance plan, we have a strategy, and we would like to make this film next spring, in 2027. We've been very fortunate to be part of the conversations with Lefteris, who, off the back of that incentive, which I was talking about earlier, we found a local Cypriot production company, and we've, aligned our dots, if you like, with access to soft money from Cyprus. I run a UK production company. We have access to the UK tax incentive for post-production, and we feel like, as niche as this story is, it connects with all migrants. My story. My grandmother walked from the Black Sea to Greece. I'm not Cypriot, but it was as if I read the Evangelia, that I read on the script was my grandmother. So yeah, we're here today because we feel like it's important also for women to tell stories, to sit in all of these, chairs of leadership, and to try and, show the world that there is business to be made differently. We are in financing at the moment. We've just finished the script. We've just finished development. We came back from Reykjavik of the development lab, and we do have a script ready to talk to investment. So we're actually at this point. And we're going to Cannes next week to talk to distributors and sales agents. So yes, we're here because I felt it's the right place to talk about equity and who would like to support the project.
I just want to say I self-published the book in 2018, and then it was quickly picked up by a traditional publisher in 2022. So within just a few years, it's gone from being my baby to being, something that's been marketed and put out there by a slightly bigger, more well-connected publisher, to now being in the hands of Athena and Ioanna, making it into a movie with the amazing support of, like we said, Agnes Scott, Daphne Alexander, and a host of other cast that we have on board. And it feels truly amazing. I never expected it. I didn't expect those very dark days to have so much light at the end, and Mum and Dad are absolutely thrilled, and it's really exciting, and I'm really glad that you've taken the time to be here and to support us in any way that you can. It's absolutely amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Cyprus Diaspora Uncovered. Subscribe to our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts for more inspiring conversations that are shaping Cyprus's global future. You can also explore more episodes on our website and selected video interviews on our YouTube channels.